to us!
Metaphor ReFantazio has finally been released, and we here at Eurogamer gave it an essential 5-star rating in our review, which means that you, yes you, should totally be playing it by now. But what if you're a newcomer to Atlas's awesome RPGs who feels overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information that you need to absorb to enjoy the game? Or maybe you're an old-school fan of the Persona and Shin Megami Tensei series who isn't used to a more fantastical setting with new gameplay mechanics. Well, worry not, because whatever type of player you are, I, Eurogamer's Ian Higton, am here to help with a handy list of 17 tips that we wish we knew before starting the game. But be warned, depending on your knowledge of Metaphor ReFantazio, minor spoilers may lie within. Royal virtues are some of the most useful stats in Metaphor ReFantazio, as attaining certain levels will allow you to access specific things like quests and facilities. If you're looking for an easy royal virtue to raise first, after being given free reign in Grand Trad, you can boost your wisdom to level 2 by the second morning of free time by heading to Sun Lumio Street.
Please, if there's anything you can do.
On your first day, accept the quest in the square to help Fabienne with her cooking, and then spend time on the bench near the shore to gain a few pips of wisdom. At night, help Fabienne, which will also raise your tolerance as a bonus, and you can turn in the quest first thing in the morning. Between the bench and the quest reward, you'll reach Wisdom level 2 and unlock 2 different things: weapon and armor purification from the church, and a quest from Brigitte, the Igniter shopkeeper. It's a very wise move indeed, and this leads us nicely onto our next tip.
Do you believe in God?
Completing the Bullish Embargo quest from Brigitte will establish your relationship with her and grant you access to the Merchant archetype. When equipped to your protagonist, this archetype will give you a special hero passive called Alchemy that awards you extra money by defeating enemies in the overworld. This is a great early way to farm cash anytime you're in a dungeon or visiting the Tradia Desert, as you can just use your fairy companion Gallica to scan for the weak enemies and then slap them around for their pocket change. Making a loop around the desert and hitting sandworms, birds, and especially the packs of dogs along the way before exiting the area and re-entering will net you around 10,000 gold a minute on a good run. And if you still need some extra cash, don't forget that you can sell your excess mag points. These are the points that you can spend on your archetype tree by visiting a specific vendor in the towns. Concentrate on ranking up Brigitte's relationship levels, and the higher they are, the better exchange rate you'll get when trading your mag for money.
There they are.
In a holdover from Persona, MP will often be your limiting factor to how long you can stay in a dungeon. There's another fantastic hero passive that will let you prolong this though, as equipping archetypes from the Mage tree on your protagonist gives you a skill called Magic Recovery. This passive refills your MP every time you defeat or stun an enemy in overworld combat, so, much like the money-making scheme in the last point, running around and hitting enemies can refill all your MP if you're patient enough. As an extra tip, make sure that you lock onto overworld enemies, as defeating one will have you automatically lock onto another nearby enemy and dash to attack it, which is much easier and quicker than just swinging at them randomly.
I see the enemy. Come on!
While your companions may tell you to try and sneak past him, it's actually well worth fighting the dragon that you find early on in the Nord mines. The reason for this is it's guarding a very strong sword for warrior archetypes that can be purified at the church later on to deal fire damage with every attack.
What an incredible find.
Never in all my years.
Your default archetype is Seeker, which is weak to fire, so you won't want to take that into battle to face the dragon. Instead, you can exploit its ice weakness by changing the protagonist to a mage archetype and getting it to rank 2 so that he can cast Blizz.
You hit their weakness!
Oh, and make sure you've also prepped for this battle beforehand by buying ice chunks from the vendor too. That way you can cause even more damage. Ice.
Thank you.
More here is a mysterious character that you meet in Academia, who will guide you through your journey and give you requests to level particular archetypes. Make sure you complete these as fast as you can so you can get him to relationship level 2, as that gives you the ability to access the archetype tree from the main menu rather than having to return to Academia by finding a save point or one of Moore's phantoms. Relationship level 4 is also a fantastic one to aim for with Moore, as it allows you to preview all the abilities that you'll learn from other follower relationships as well, allowing you to plan how you'll want to spend your days ahead of time.
Close combat. Falling back. I can take it.
In a break from Persona's battles, Metaphor has a row system, not unlike classic Final Fantasies. Keeping allies in the front row will raise their melee damage, but lower their defense, and vice versa for the back row. As you progress, certain abilities can only be used from either the front or back row, and archetypes such as Commander and General can even move party members between rows to give certain buffs. Always trying to keep in mind before you attack, use an ability, item or guard that your row matters, as it can make or break a turn against tough enemies. It only gets more complicated as you go, so the earlier that you can get a handle on it, the better.
Stepping back. Let's see how this plays out.
Let's take
One important thing to know about combat in Metaphor ReFantazio is that you can hit enemy weaknesses twice in one go. This sounds great, obviously, but it's not so great when you realise that this rule also applies to the enemy's attacks as well. So, if you have an ally weak to a certain element or physical attack, you're going to want to stop your foes from exploiting that weakness by making use of certain tanking skills such as the Knight's Proclamation. This skill taunts enemies into attacking your tanky characters instead of those little squishy weaker ones. It may seem like a waste of a turn to not always hit enemy weaknesses and focus on defense instead, but this isn't Persona and there are no all-out attacks for downing all enemies. That means you're better off playing the long game sometimes and not losing out on more turns by getting knocked out. If you're in a dungeon and you spot a blocked off area on the map that you've got no idea how to reach, look for a crawl space or a ladder in an adjacent room. If you're lucky and you find one of these, there's a chance that you'll have discovered a hidden path into that inaccessible area. To help you spot these things earlier, when looking at the map, you'll often spot areas that are very, very close together, and more often than not, exploring these areas will lead you to find secret entrances to the one that's close by. Sure, it's expensive, but make sure to buy the Phantasmal doll accessory if you want a nice little boost in battles. You can buy the Phantasmal doll accessory at night from Gloam Hall in Grand Trad for the eye-watering sum of 49,000 reeve, but once equipped to a character, it allows them to perform 2 consecutive actions in combat. This doesn't increase your turn amount, as the character will just take 2 turns, but it does allow for special sequences of attacks that you couldn't do otherwise. And this becomes very useful when you need to attack bosses with very specific plans. But don't rush to the shops right away, because there may just be an ideal time to buy this accessory, which I'll cover in the next point.
Absorb the enemy. We can do this. General.
Hello there.
If you plan on making a purchase, such as the Phantasmal doll accessory from the last point, and you're not in a rush, it might be better to wait until Idlesday, as this is when shops have big sales and you can get weapons, items and armour for cheaper. Honestly, unless you really need something quickly, you shouldn't actually be buying anything on the other days of the week at all, as you can mostly control when you enter dungeons. Idlesday is weekly, of course, but it's worth keeping an eye on the calendar for other special discount days as well.
Got it?
If you're a fan of cooking in RPGs, Metaphor ReFantazio has you covered with its very own cooking mechanics. And to help you out with your recipes, you can periodically check the pantry in the Gauntlet Runner to get free cooking ingredients, which is nice. Don't spend time cooking at the beginning of the game though, as you can waste an entire day doing so. Instead, focus on improving your relationship with Maria until it reaches rank 4, because once you reach this point, you can unlock the speed cooking skill, which will allow you to cook anything you want on the Gauntlet Runner without time elapsing.
Poison. Please, can you remedy this pain?
If a status ailment lingers after battle, don't you go rushing straight off to get into another scrap, because if you run around the dungeon for like a minute or two, that annoying ailment will go away all on its own. A higher luck stat will also make status ailments go away more quickly, so focus on improving that if you're keen to see the back of these pesky little problems as soon as you can.
I am cleansed of poison. What a relief.
What do you want to know?
Before you head out on a big journey, always, and I mean always, buy all the tips from the informants and check the weather forecasts from the fortune tellers. Knowing what monster weaknesses you'll face on particular quests or in dungeons drastically increases your chances of success, and not entering a dungeon when the weather is bad will minimise how many resources you'll burn through staying alive. For example, bad weather removes the bonus turns that you get from hitting weaknesses that I mentioned earlier, and this can make things way more difficult.
Run away!
Also, when checking info from informants, make special note of archetypes that you should not have equipped, as popping on the wrong one can anger certain enemies and make them much more powerful.
Think you kindly.
I bet there's treasure around here.
Mimic chests can be tricky to spot if you're not paying attention, so make sure to use Gallica's Pulse in a dungeon to scan any that you see. Regular chests have a white outline around them, so if you spot one that is outlined in red, you'll know that it is a nasty mimic.
Huh?
I shall be your opponent.
If you want to fight that mimic, make sure that you have light spells equipped and, even better, the gold attack from the merchant archetype, as throwing money at a mimic chest makes them lose a turn. They may not be as sexy as active skills, but your passives can be majorly important, like the aforementioned alchemy skill for the merchant that helps you farm cash early on. These passives really begin to sing when you use high-level ones across different archetypes. For instance, Martial Law from the Swordmaster archetype gives you a 50+ bonus to all basic attacks, and that can be carried into other archetypes too, making that character so much stronger all around. Inherited passives do tend to cost much more mag than active skills, however, but that just shows you how highly Metaphor values them. Make sure you keep an eye on which passives you'll learn on what level on the archetype screen, so that you can plan around switching to your next one. It's also important to note that passives marked with Hero Passive are specific to your main character. They often benefit the whole party, so don't discount them, but other party members can't learn them, and, unlike other passives, you can't inherit them across classes either, so you can only use the Hero Passive for the archetype that you have equipped.
Let's make an end of it!
As you get further into Metaphor, synthesis skills become incredibly powerful and should be one of the primary considerations for party composition.
The power of ice!
Synthesis skills are special skills that can only be used based on the present archetypes that your party members have, and while they can be costly as they take MP from multiple characters and 2 turns, they can also single-handedly turn the tide of a battle, or even, if you're lucky, flat out end it. There are certain boss fights that you can absolutely tear through using nothing but synthesis skills, so always keep them in mind if you want to be as efficient in battle as possible.
What was that?
So slow.
Wind!
And finally, do not neglect the Battle Redo feature, as it is incredibly useful for testing the waters before a big boss fight. For instance, to find an enemy's weakness, sometimes you just have to throw a bunch of spells at them to see what hits hardest, and rather than eat all that wasted MP, you can use your first attempt to gather information on that enemy's strengths and weaknesses.
Wind isn't working. Try hitting them with something else.
Then, when you restart the battle with the Battle Redo feature, you'll get all your HP, MP, and items back. And even better, the enemy status screen will still be filled out, so you can focus on their weaknesses from the get-go.
They're weak to piercing attacks. Hit them all in one fell swoop.
I will show you a world with honor.
Seeker!
And there you have it. Those were 17 things that we wish we knew before starting Metaphor ReFantazio. But what is this outro metaphor? Well, it's Metaphor asking you to like this video if you found it useful, and to subscribe to Eurogamer for almost daily videos about video games, of course. And if you fancy watching more tips from us here at Eurogamer, please do click on one of these other videos that are on screen and clickable right now. Goodbye.
Let's do this!
It's almost like it's protecting the crystal.
To the rear guard.
Engaging. Take this.